NieR Automata is a complicated game. It's complicated level design, the combat is complicated, the systems are complicated, and the story is just the same. It's a recursive game, one that'll have you repeating things a lot, and that's one of the takeaways from this game. It's a cycle. You never quite reach catharsis or the final conclusion of a plot that simply begs for resolution. No, NieR is all about the journey rather than the destination. But what does this seemingly straightforward story have in store?
Everything that lives is designed to end. We are perpetually trapped in a never-ending spiral of life and death. Is this a curse? Or some kind of punishment? I often think about the God who blessed us with this cryptic puzzle, and wonder if we'll ever have the chance to kill him.
This is the way that NieR Automata starts telling its story, and from the first line spoken by Android 2B, it's critical that the player pays attention and takes things seriously. From a story perspective, this line is relevant much later on in the game, as well as a gameplay perspective, because the game has a pretty hard tutorial. It doesn't really teach you its systems as much as it guides you in the general direction of self-discovery. For example, you don't learn the strengths and weaknesses of attacks until you try it for yourself. You don't know that your bullets will destroy enemy bullets, but not glowing bullets, until you learn it on your own. Even things like double jumping, gliding on your pod, and lots of other neat little tricks are largely unexplained by the game. This sets the tone for future experiences, as the point is clearly made to the player. Pay attention, because this is important. The tutorial itself is hard enough to give even the most veteran of action players a run for their money, and only through sheer mastery of the game's systems by the end of the hour-long tutorial level will you finally be rewarded with the privilege of saving. Failure to complete the tutorial gives you one of three options: either lower the difficulty, improve your understanding of the game, or...
Everything that lives is designed to end.
Yep. Failure to complete the tutorial means that you have to restart right from the beginning. You can be 40 minutes in, but if you fail, it's right back to the start you go. It's reflective of the game as a whole, the first hour of the tutorial. It's a distillation of everything you'll experience as the game progresses, and the tutorial's climactic conclusion is very similar to the game's ending. The only thing that really changes between the tutorial and the game's actual ending is merely the player's perception of its impact.
I don't imagine that this is going to end well.
But before we get to the ending, let's rewind a bit and talk about the basics of the story. NieR Automata picks up on the endings of NieR Replicant and NieR Gestalt, portraying a dilapidated planet Earth overrun by machines. Humanity is all but extinct, having escaped to the moon and setting up a base there, leaving behind only the machines and androids that still inhabit the planet. The androids, directed by the humans, created Project Yorha, a special group with a base orbiting the planet from space tasked with the job of defeating the machines and ending the war. The player assumes the role of Yorha Android 2B, a battle specialized unit who descends to Earth and works with a fellow scanner unit known as 9S. The gameplay itself is rather impressive for a simple hack-and-slash game, because it's anything but that. It features vertical shoot-'em-up, side-scrolling, a hacking minigame where you pilot a little virtual spaceship, 2D bullet hells, 3D bullet hells, Souls-like combat, and the main genre of the game, action-based fighting. I can imagine pitching this idea to a board of directors and getting a flat-out no based on this alone, but the combination of all of these elements end up helping the game rather than hindering it. For example, when you play as 2B, you are primarily hacking and slashing your foes, creating stylish combos and destroying the enemy with deadly finesse. When you play as 9S, you're primarily hacking the enemy, taking the fight to cyberspace, and dealing with threats indirectly. It's this kind of gameplay divergence that reflects the very characters themselves. I was absolutely blown away in a section where you're playing as 9S and you have to save 2B in a factory overrun by suicidal machines. Instead of going in himself, 9S opts to hack machines and go through the entire level, essentially controlling the enemies, hacking into new ones as the current one either got low on health or simply wasn't suited to the current environment. It was one of those aha moments that would have simply been less had these genres not been included in the game. Perspective takes this concept further. At times you have a free camera, while at others you're locked into a side-scrolling view, or even a top-down perspective of your character. It's a fresh new way to look at the game, and it really shows off the beauty of NieR Automata's world. Your menus even glitch out when your android is getting hacked or otherwise damaged. It's full of little details like this that make you appreciate the world that much more. Like 2B's skirt getting completely blown off when you self-destruct, and a removable OS chip that simply ends the game right then and there if you remove it. More adventurous players may even get 2B swiping your camera away if you try and get a good look under her maid skirt. Technology. So the game world is great, and the genres are more than the sum of its parts, but I would be absolutely remiss if I didn't talk about what possibly is the game's greatest aspect: the music. NieR Automata went above and beyond the typical soundtrack for the game. It features an invented language similar to NieR, with some songs having lyrics in whatever your chosen language option is. It's interesting though because the words are definitely not made up. For example, in the amusement park song, even though I don't really understand what the singer is saying, I can clearly pick out moments where she mentions Yorha itself in a sort of fourth wall breaking attempt that is largely unnoticed unless you're really paying attention. The soundtrack itself is hauntingly beautiful, making a great combination of upbeat combat themes with bittersweet melancholies. It even has horrific alterations of some of its themes, including voice lines taken straight from the game itself and overlaid onto the tracks to add more emotion. All of that said, we're not even at the most incredible feature of the soundtracks. They evolve over time. Each track has at least 3 or 4 different versions, ranging from quiet, where they only play the vocal or instrumental of the track, to the dynamic, where they add in all of the explosive beats and elements that make a complete piece of music. To illustrate, have a listen to this. NieR Automata goes above and beyond in almost all aspects, but I'd like to take a moment and talk about some of the more philosophical points of the title.
Doesn't matter how much oil you give him, little guy. You can't make a machine your brother. Well, looks like it's time.
NieR Automata is much more than what I've seen a lot of other reviewers talk about when it comes to its finer points. I'm guessing that mainly this is because they haven't played the game all the way to its final conclusion of ending E. Yes, it's a title and a story that simply couldn't be possible without being in the medium of a game, and it does have innovations and concepts that'll be hailed for years to come. They will also serve as a guideline for future titles. However, one thing that I've seen a lot of people miss is the philosophical element of the game. From the creation of Adam and Eve representing the creation and subsequent fall of man, to the androids taking off their blindfolds representative of original sin, and the eating of the forbidden fruit, NieR Automata is more than a story about machines, androids, and humans.
Hey, our leader told me all about you. Name's Jackass. Nice to meet you. I hear you're planning to take out all the machines in the desert? Guess that means we need to get that entrance open.
Looks like it. So, Jackass, was it? What are you doing all the way out here?
But it is just that. Take the machines. They've been part of what's called the network, a digital mesh of mind space where they don't really have free will and information is freely shared amongst themselves. One day, some of these machines decide to free themselves from this network, and the repercussions of this decision echoes out through the entire game. Some of these machines, no longer having the desire to fight androids, set up shop in an abandoned area near the theme park, and using what knowledge they have of the humans, simulate to great effect their emotions, desires, and habits. I remember one quest involving a particular robot that asks you to find and save her little sister, who went out to the desert looking for parts. You lead the sister back home when you hear this little exchange.
Hey, mister, are there any children?
Well, machines can't really make children. Neither can androids, now that I think about it.
Yeah, but how do you make them?
2B? Little help here?
Huh? You're the chatty one. Work it out.
Oof.
Mister, wait. You gotta tell me how you make children.
Wow, it's getting late. Let's get you home already.
The simulation of humanity permeates almost every aspect of the game. The machines desire to be more human-like and will go to extreme lengths to copy their motives and desires. Take Simone, who serves as the opera boss in the beginning parts of the game. She built herself up, adding spare parts to her body to become more beautiful in the eyes of the robot whose affection she wanted to win over. She was ignored, however, and so turned to more extreme measures, culminating in killing her own machine allies and even androids in a desperate attempt to improve her appearance. Many side quests are demands or challenges that robots give you, and upon fulfilling of these requests, the robots simply no longer feel the desire to live anymore and subsequently get themselves killed in one way or another. This is reflective of humanity itself, and I think Yoko Taro, the game's director, was hinting at a lot of Nietzschean concepts and playing them out to their ultimate conclusion here. Friedrich Nietzsche was a German philosopher and one of the giants that had advanced our understanding of ourselves and humanity. He once said, "He who has a why to live for can bear almost any how." This means that as long as you have a good reason to live, you will continue to do so until the very end. Yoko Taro takes this concept and flips it on its head, showing you just what happens when even programmed machines lose their motives to exist.
And here you are. I know you two feel the same. That this world is utterly meaningless. As far as I'm concerned, my brother was everything. And now, everything must die!
The machines that are connected to the network have no will, but the ones outside lose any motivation once their desires are satisfied. The androids are protecting planet Earth in order to take it back for humanity. Adam and Eve live for each other, and once Adam dies in the game, Eve no longer sees a motive to continue living. NieR and even the player come to this conclusion at a certain stage in the game that really makes you ask yourself, was everything that I just did pointless? Why am I even playing this game? What sense does it make to continue a struggle that's doomed to never resolve? And these are the kind of questions that Yoko Taro poses to everyone, not just the player, but the characters in the game. In Nietzsche's book, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, he is quoted as writing that God is dead. What he meant by this is that we humans operate on a moral level, biologically, socially, and culturally. We're a species that follows rules, and when we inverse the rules and put ourselves above them, we change the entire paradigms that we have of reality. If there's no God to give us our rules and standards of living, then we essentially become a meaningless creature. The lack of limitation of our actions means there is no quantifiable frame of reference to judge those actions, and thus we become our own masters, but at the cost of our very souls and morality. After all, who could truly judge right and wrong for themselves? In NieR Automata, the part of God is played out by several characters. The humans who left the planet served as the androids and machines' moral motivations, both bent on either their destruction or salvation. At a certain point in the story, NieR learns that the humans were long gone by the time Project Yorha even began. It's mentioned that androids will eventually lose all will to live should they ever find this out, and so this was kept a secret from most of the Yorha androids. The android servitude to humanity and being limited by the frame of emulating and wanting to be human is played out almost to a T if you look a little bit closer. Androids themselves feel pain, pity, fear, and plenty of human emotions that would otherwise hinder something like a military operation. Even their attire, maid-like in appearance, is proof of their unerring subservience to humanity. Take that human moral element away, and all you have is a shell of a creature, someone with no why with which to suffer their how. But more on gods later. There's an ancient Greek myth which you may or may not be familiar with. It speaks of the tale of Icarus, the son of Daedalus. Daedalus, being a craftsman, attaches wax wings to the back of Icarus and tells him to escape from the island of Crete, but not to fly too low to the water or too high to the sun. Icarus, in his hubris, ultimately flies too close to the sun and melts his wax wings, thus falling to the sea and ending his life. This is very similar to the story of the copied city, the huge megastructure that Adam creates underneath the ruins of humanity. It's a cheap simulacrum, and the overconfident Adam takes this test too far.
Thus I decided that I shall risk my life in battle. I have severed my connection to the network. Now, let us embrace death.
He challenges 2B to a battle of life and death in order to find out exactly what it means to risk your very existence and face the concept of total oblivion. His hubris is ultimately the end of him as he finally learns what it means to live, but at the cost of his own life.
Is this death? So dark, so cold.
NieR! Come on, let's go home.
I suppose with a game this complex, a clean resolution would be something that would simply be too hard to ask for. The game designers themselves clearly don't think that you should necessarily finish this title, or maybe you shouldn't even be trying. They beat the player down with these nihilistic views, the characters lose their motivations and become unhinged over time, and even 2B herself loses her life, and a major draw for players to continue playing the game. I know that personally I felt that something was missing in this world once 2B was gone, and that the game had taken a darker turn, and it was definitely not something that I was willing to accept. The third android that you play as, A2, does her best to reconcile what little remains in the world. She had to take 2B's own life in a scene about as sad as the famous microwave hallway from Metal Gear Solid 4. But not all hope is necessarily lost. 2B's memories, her data, and her recollections are passed on to A2, who symbolically cuts her hair. This is pure speculation on my part, but in my opinion, A2 took 2B's memories and absorbed much of her psyche. The resulting A2 could be thought of as a mix between the two characters, as A2 begins to display behavior that is really completely unlike her. From saving robots and helping them in the village, to being compassionate about 9S and going as far as to even give her own life to save him in one of the endings. It's almost as if the will of 2B lives on in A2. And speaking of endings, they're all quite satisfying. There are two endings to the game, the first one being where A2 realizes that 9S has been attacked by the logic virus that wiped out all of the other Yorha androids, and gives up her own life in order to restore 9S to his fully functional state. It's a divine moment as A2 looks up at an unknown future and ponders if there's anything that awaits her. She mentions "Everyone, I'm coming" before collapsing on the ground and the game fading to black as the credits begin to roll. After the credits, one can see that all over the world the robots have now disappeared, 9S has put his weapons down, and he's likely on his way to find himself and the world a new future. The second ending is more interesting. It turns out that there was a huge space cannon created as an arc by the machines that was to be used to send the information of the machines, including Adam and Eve, out into deep space to another planet. 9S is also given an offer to join them, and if you choose it, the ending shows the arc firing off the data of 9S and the machines, who no longer have the will to fight and realize that they should stop trying to emulate humanity and try something new. It's a beautiful way to wrap up the story, even if it does end up being bittersweet, leaving no real happy ending for everyone. Or is there?
I realize something. I have come to the conclusion that I cannot accept this resolution.
The destruction of all Yorha units is an essential component of the project plan. All data must be destroyed.
Pod 042 to Pod 153. Repeat. Personal data deletion request denied. Initiating data salvage. Pod 153. You hoped they would survive as well, didn't you?
We lack the authority for such an action. The rules are protected by low-level systems. Salvaging data poses an unacceptable level of risk. Knowing that, do you still wish for them to survive?
Remember when we were talking about gods earlier? They were played by machines imitating their ascension to divinity, by the culture left by humans, and even by the player deciding the outcome of the game's events. But to ascend even beyond that, To challenge the very rule makers of the game, there is an alternative option. If you can beat the creators of NieR Automata at their own game and challenge the true god of the world, you can reap the benefits. Mind you, this last bullet hell section is almost completely impossible to complete by yourself, so you're gonna need some help. Other players come in the form of ships that surround yours, sacrificing their very save data so that you can succeed. It's a final desperate attempt to try and change fate for the better, and boy is this powerful. If you can manage to beat Yoko Taro, Square Enix's marketing division, and everyone else in the final credits section of the game, you are rewarded with ending E, which some think of as the true ending, or the end of Yorha. The pods, who have been helping out the androids the entire game, salvage all of the data and memories of the now dead androids 9S, A2, 2B, and reassemble them with new pieces that they've found. The final scenes of the game show that the pods have pieced the androids back together completely and are philosophizing about deciding the future for yourself. The last scenes we see are doves flying away from the camera. Doves, which are symbolic of peace in most cultures, which seems to foreshadow a bright new dawn for the world and its 3 restored characters.
'Cause we're gonna shout it loud, even if our words seem meaningless. It's like I'm carrying the weight of the world. I wish that some way, somehow, that I could save every one of us. But the truth is that I'm only one girl. Maybe if I keep believing, my dreams will come to life, come to life.
Thanks everyone for watching this video. I know it's been a long time since I've released something on my channel, but this was an absolutely massive project for me. I had to play the game, which took forever. I was also having GPU issues and the game itself was crashing every 5 seconds, so I do apologize for that. I do want to thank everyone for watching this though. I spent a lot of work on it, and please leave a like if you liked it. Leave your comments. I'd like to know what you guys think. There was no way that I would be able to put all of the elements that this game really had inside of it onto a video because it would be way too long, way too annoying, and honestly, I think it's a little bit more fun if the players can play the game for themselves and find out some more philosophical and story type elements. So let me know what you guys think. I will be back with more videos soon. See you guys next time.